Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Caregiver Coffee Chat podcast. I am so excited about who I have on as my special guest. We'll get to that in a minute. But today, topic is caregiving and motherhood. And as caregivers, one of the biggest things that we can do for ourselves is be prepared by having a medical history plan in advance of an emergency, so we're ready to go when the unexpected happens. So be sure to hit the link below in the description box wherever you're watching this on Spotify, Apple, or my YouTube channel to download your free copy of my Ultimate Caregiver Organizer, because that'll also get you on the wait list, because I have another big surprise coming the end of the month on May 31st. So you want to be on the email list to get first come serve details on that. And also I do want you thinking ahead and having a basic medical history ready to go for your sick spouse, sick kiddo, sick aging parent today versus when you're in an emergency situation and it's late. So definitely check out the link below. But moving on to our episode today and who I am so excited. I have Rebekah Lara with me. She is a fellow mompreneur, a published author, which is a huge one for her. I'm so proud of her for that. And I really bonded with Rebekah. I actually met her in the same mastermind through the same business coach 3 years ago. Can you believe it? And we just really bonded over our journeys of having to leave our corporate careers or workforce careers to be home full time to take care of our kiddos. And in her case, it's special needs children that have some complicated health issues. For me, it's caring for my epileptic spouse and now my aging father. So we just really bonded on that journey of trying to balance taking care of ourselves, taking care of our sick family members while building a business. So it's kind of a lot. But anyway, Rebekah, thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat today.
I am too. So Rebekah, before we really dive into the topics and everything here, why don't we let our listeners know a little bit more about you?
Sure thing. So where to begin? My journey is long, I feel, but the short version is I'm a mom, like you said, to 3 girls. They all have multiple medical diagnoses, but the most significant is my oldest daughter, who is the survivor of acute liver failure, which resulted in multiple organ failure. And so her critical illness had her hospitalized for 74 days and a recovery period of 3.5 years. So caregiving became my number one priority for many years. And I became an honorary nurse and full-time, caregiver and mom, while also, dealing with the pandemic and all those things happening. And so, yes, my new business was born out of all of that. I used to be an architect who went back to school to become a teacher, who then became the full-time mom and caregiver. So I have a lot of experience, and it all led me toward helping other women kind of find time for their goals and their dreams. And it's especially hard for those of us who have sick family members that we have to care for. And my passion is just in helping people at least carve out a little bit of time for themselves so that they don't get lost in caregiving and that they can still find some joy and fulfillment in their own goals.
Wow. And that is something I really like too, is like we were both in the mastermind about the same time, in 2020, when we were all dealing with the impact of the worldwide COVID pandemic. That just made everything worse.
Yes, exactly.
More isolation, really tough to get in contact with our medical teams when we're trying to care for our sick loved ones, for you, your children, for me, my spouse. And I just really appreciated how the timing just worked. God just worked it out. The stars just aligned. We were both in the mastermind. And Faith Mariah, shout out to Faith Mariah, our amazing friend and my business coach and her colleague now, just for just being there for us when we needed her most. Let's take it back a little bit though. I'm a little curious. So when was the time? So the timeline for me of when things really hit, my husband's had his first seizure in December of 2019, but I didn't really start thinking about, things are not this could be permanent. This is getting out of control And I didn't have to start thinking about leaving my job as a CNA, certified nursing assistant, until April into May of 2020. So I didn't necessarily leave my job like right away. What was the timeline like for you? Was it kind of like that too, where things kind of started to snowball slowly and then all of a sudden it hit and then you really had to make a choice about leaving your job and being home full time with your children?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my situation was that I was pregnant with my second daughter in 2012, and I was teaching. And when I became a teacher, it was during like the I'm blanking on the word, when the economy crashed in 2008. And so I was like a 30-some-year-old person in a new career, but I was the first year of hires. So they kept letting us go that first year. Like we're on the bottom of the totem pole, right? So every year they'd let us go. It was called riffing, reduction in force. And then they call you back. But when they call you back, you have a choice of a whole new position. So like you're in a different school at a different grade level, and basically you're starting all over. And that kept happening for like 4 years. And so when I was pregnant with my second daughter and I got riffed again, and I was just like, okay, now I have a 3-year-old and a newborn and I have to go start a new job again, pack up my whole classroom, move to a new building, get to know everyone. I was like, okay, I think I'm just going to take a year off, like until they get a little older and everyone's in daycare and preschool. And then surprise, our third daughter, we were expecting her right away. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to take a break from teaching because now I have 3 kids under 4, and to pay for childcare as on a teacher's salary for 3 kids, it just doesn't make sense. And right at that time is when a lot of the medical issues were becoming more apparent. And so I had very challenging newborns. I mean, we didn't know why they were so challenging for a while. Like they didn't sleep, they didn't eat, they had a lot of other stuff going on. So it just kind of evolved that way. And so I intended just to take a year off, and then I never went back. And things just kind of, medically got harder on our family. So I needed to be home.
Similar timeline for us too. When Daryl had his first seizure, it really wasn't like I knew it was a seizure. It was just, he just passed out. So I thought it was thinking like, okay, there's a 20-year age gap between us. So I was thinking more along the lines of, oh, he's tired, being in his early 50s, dealing with an almost 1-year-old at the time versus when he was in his 20s or 30s, like my age at the time I was. And, something simple, thinking with my medical brain, something simple we can just, deal with some extra sleep, some better nutrition, hydration, maybe some supplementation, something simple that wasn't like horribly wrong. But when he had more episodes in January and March of 2020, I knew something was maybe starting to happen. And then April, something clicked. That was this first month that he had 10 to 20 plus seizures a month. And we blew through the first medication. It did not work. And that's when I started to realize, okay, something is happening. And that's when we also started and being amazed when I went on medical leave for my job as a CNA. And we started a new medication, new doctor, and I was like, but in my gut, that's when I started to realize this could be permanent. There's no way I can't leave him home alone with our 1-year-old daughter because she can't call 911. She can't get medication. So there was that safety concern. And personally, with thinking with my medical brain, with COVID going on, I don't want a bunch of strangers in my house right now. So that's not a good option. So that was really kind of the starting point for me. But then again, my problem was I don't have another background. I have no BA, no master's. I did do an intensive job hunt in May of that year where I was on my first 3 weeks of medical leave. And I ran into that problem. I don't have a bachelor's. I don't have a master's. I don't have X amount of years in another industry. I just have my healthcare career and I cannot leave my house. And I certainly can't stay at my computer for 8 hours a day either to hit a quota for like telemarketing calls or something, because I got to drop things if my daughter needs something, or more importantly, if my husband has a seizure. So I was stuck.
Yeah.
So that's really kind of what shifted me into the online space. I had no clue what I was doing when I started, but I just knew that building something of my own versus being controlled by another boss and company and marketing situation was a lot better. I'd have more flexibility.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I do understand that getting that scary diagnosis, not knowing what's going on, and making having to learn a lot of skills really fast was hard. I mean, I grant you, I have one leg up on you being medically trained, but in my 15-year career, I didn't have the benefit of having a prior seizure or epileptic patient. So I had to still digest a lot of content on what do I do with this illness. So I
Yeah.
understand that. So let's take it forward a little bit in your timeline. What inspired you to then get the concept for your business? Obviously, the best way, like an author, like being an author, you write what you know, but same thing is very true with being an entrepreneur, guys. You share about, you teach about, you empower with what you know. Personally, for me, obviously, since I have the upper hand of having a medical background and I've learned a lot in my own personal caregiving journey, it's a lot different than professionally in a lot of ways. That's what I know. So, but you have a former background as an architect too and a teacher. So what inspired you to kind of blend the two, so to speak, with your online business
Right.
and to target the women that you target?
Yeah, so it was nothing that was planned. Let's just put it that way. It all started as my need to have. So I started as a blogger, and it was in a totally different niche, and it was more of just a creative outlet for myself. So when I was home for 3 years being a full-time caregiver, it just, as you know, can be all encompassing, and especially when they're children. And I had 3 of them, and then the pandemic, and um it's just, I felt like there was no escape, like there was nowhere to go physically, even when the pandemic was in full swing. So it's just like I started blogging as just a creative outlet for myself, just something else for my brain to think about besides caregiving. Because when my daughter was, we had lots of medical diagnoses along the way, including epilepsy for my middle daughter. None of them felt as, yes, they were overwhelming, but when my daughter was sick, like we almost lost her, and I didn't know what her future was going to look like in the beginning. So it felt very, I don't know, disheartening. And, it was just, I was in a low spot in my life. And so I just needed my brain to think about something else for a while, 1 hour a day or whatever. So it just started as a hobby, as a creative outlet. And little by little, I learned more and more. And like you said, I realized that if I could create a business online, that might be the right fit for me and my family, for the flexibility, so that I could go to all the doctor's appointments. We had several therapies, per week for every kid. And it was like, how would I ever work a 9 to 5 and still drive them to all these appointments and do the therapies and do the home exercises and, all the regular stuff we have to do. So, it just kind of slowly evolved, because it started as a hobby, and I realized there was potential for creating a business that could fit our lifestyle. So, and then, I just pulled, like you said, from my experiences in my other careers to kind of, put it all together. It just, I could never have planned it to go this way, but I'm really happy it worked out the way it did.
I had no idea that one of your daughters had epilepsy. So that's something interesting. And then also too, I think it's interesting you mentioned a blogger. I did the same thing. I started out with a mom blog and it shifted into like 4 different things.
Yeah.
I finally found Faith in October of 2020. And I realized, okay, and she coached me hard that first quarter of, no, you need to niche down and do some market research and figure out what you're really about. It took some time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I
Journey.
so I think that's kind of interesting how that works. So when did you find Faith then? When did you?
That's a good question. I was definitely her first in her first group of mastermind members, but I had found her through Elite Blog Academy, the blogging course.
Gotcha.
And so that's where I first met her online, and then started following her. When she opened up the mastermind, I was one of the first founding members, and never left. now
you're her
we're
VA. I
working.
love that. And
Now I'm a co-coach in her program, and
right. Shout out to Faith. She's incredible. And also, Rebekah does a lot. Okay, she runs her own business, y'all. She's a mom, a wife, and she's a VA for me, still continuing mastermind coach. So it's amazing what she does, and she's so good. If you're struggling with symptoms, definitely check out my girl Rebekah out. She's really good. So when you were deciding, when you're balancing all this out, okay, you're dealing with running a business. You got the idea for that to kind of be as a form of self-care, because I very much feel like my business is a form of self-care. Like you said, it's an outlet. It's something that's my own. It's something that, it's still dealing with the topics that, we've struggled with, but it's a way to put them in a limelight that's more positive and productive and helping somebody else get me out of the situation and focus on someone else for a change. So when you're trying to find a balance between taking care of yourself, being a mom, being a mompreneur, what would be 3 tips that you could give our listeners for just where to start? Because I mean, when you're hit with the unexpected, be it personally your health or again, a child's or multiple children, or like me, I'm dealing with an aging parent who's has some health issues, and I have a chronically ill spouse only at the age of 50, only at the age of 37. That's a lot. And I'm still building a business. So how do you just navigate all that? If someone's who's listening is in a similar situation like us, what would be 3 tips that you would want to give them to help them figure out a balance between motherhood, caregiving, entrepreneurship?
I like to help my clients realize that they don't have to go from 0 to 60, so to start slow and start simple, especially if you're coming from a place of, I don't have time, or how could I possibly make this work? Just slowly building the foundation. So start simple. Like I started with a very, short goal list for my business. And as things in my life changed, I was able to add on and build that. But so start simple would be number 1. You don't have to do all the things right away. And number 2 is just get started, right? Like I'm a big believer, especially since my daughter, almost lost her life. And I learned really fast how quickly you never know what tomorrow brings. You just never know whether it's a grave illness like that or anything else unexpected. And so I had always been waiting for someday I'll do this, or someday I'll become the published author. And I realized, like, we're not guaranteed that someday. So what can you do today to just get started? It doesn't have to be the big thing, but to just start moving in the right direction, at least. That gave me a lot of hope and a lot of joy and fulfillment, just learning to love the process. And let's see, number 3 is, don't lose sight of yourself, like you said, with self-care. And so that was also a journey for me. I went from doing nothing for myself to having a really nice routine today, but I didn't get there overnight either. So I just started adding in one thing at a time. And for me, it was eating a healthy breakfast. Like that's where it started. And now I have an hour every morning for self-care, a routine and a ritual that I created for myself. But just start somewhere.
Right. And guys, like you've heard me talk about it on previous episodes too, and on my social media email list. 15 minutes. Start small. Okay. I personally do an hour routine too. I come in here with my cup of coffee, with my cup of tea, my bottle of water. I do my devotions, my journaling, even some stuff that Rebekah taught me how to do. I do it every morning, Rebekah. And then I start working on my work stuff. And the trick there, guys, is what we call habit stacking. So when you're trying to implement something new in, again, don't go be like Rebekah said and say, try to go from 0 to 60. Just habit stack it in, okay? 15 minutes, okay? If you really want to lose the 50 pounds, you're not going to go out and run a marathon the first day. Start making a habit of trying to get in a 15-minute walk every day. That's what I've been doing. And obviously I'm doing longer walks now, but 15 minutes, work on drinking more water, get a tumbler and just work on refilling it. Okay. A couple times a day, or figuring out what your allotment of ounces is. For me, I need to hit 90 ounces. So that translates into 4 or 5 of these a day. I don't chug them, but I sip on them and I try to hit that goal. So how can you habit stack with where you're at right now? Because right now you might be in, like Rebekah and I are well established with our self-care routines, and we have a rhythm about the ebbs and flows of our loved ones' illnesses. So we have a routine around that. But again, it hasn't happened overnight, and I guarantee you it won't happen overnight for you. But just to start, what is something that you can do that's low-hanging fruit that you can do in 15 minutes or less to get yourself started? And then from there, pay attention. What what is something that you really want to focus on? In the business world, we do 90-day goals, maybe even just do a month goal. It's May 1st. Okay. So for the month of May, what is one self-care goal that you want to hit? Okay. Write that down. One exercise I'm going to share with that Rebekah gave me is doing she has 3 things that she has me journal on that I just love doing. So I write 3 long-term goals in the I, and then I write out 3 things I'm thankful for, because let's face it, if we focus on just all the negative things, it's draining. It just drains our soul and our energy. It just is not good. And then I write in 3 believe things, to kind of tie in, like to connect it back to those 3 long-term goals. So I know Rebekah, for a long time, for over a year, was it a year? I think you wrote that I will be a published author. She hit
Yeah,
it
longer.
twice last year. And I'm so proud of her. So she hit it. So for me, it's selling out my new surprise. I'm not gonna say any more, but I have something coming, hitting my income goals for that. Monetizing my podcast and YouTube channel in different ways. I have some ideas for that, and that's coming, guys. And then also just paying off debt and having a goal of having 6 months of bills saved up. So if things hit the fan, I am good to go to provide for my family, and I don't have to think about it. So, but that's me. So what are 3 goals for you? And then with that believe list, where it comes in. So for me, as an example, it would be like, I will monetize my podcast and my YouTube channel. I will sell out the number of sales I want for various programs or courses I have going on or coming out. I will pay off my debt and get 6 months of bills saved up. And for me, that's like that's 5 to 6 grand. So even having a number to associate with that is a good way to have a goal. So think about that. What's some low-hanging fruit that you want to go after, and what's some long, bigger pieces that are higher up the tree that you want to go after? Okay. But again, it's not going to happen overnight. We're not expecting you to get it overnight, and that's okay. And I think the biggest thing, wouldn't you agree, Rebekah, wherever you're at in the on the pendulum of this journey, is asking for help.
Yes, completely. I learned that too, that, I had to communicate with my spouse about my new goals and my new business. Like, you can't expect people to read your mind or know what you're reaching for and how they can support you. And more often than not, they're happy to support you. They just might not understand how when things are changing. And so, yeah, we worked on it so that our mornings, getting 3 girls to school every day, and he's going off to work, and I have my clients. It took some juggling and some fine tuning, but we approached it as a team. And so he works, he goes to, let me start again. He exercises one morning and I exercise the next morning. We have a rotation. And so when that person's exercising, the other person can help the children, and vice versa. But that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't asked him, like, how can we brainstorm to make this work? And so I definitely learned communication was key for both of us to reach our goals.
Yeah. And not just with your spouse. Think about what I call is you're building your support network.
Yeah,
so
that too, for sure.
For us, I know for me, thinking with the business mindset, I rely on Rebekah. I may not be a paid student, but she has just really been there for me. Thank you, Rebekah. With tips and support, just being a mompreneur and she understands and gets the stresses of being a caregiver. So having Rebekah in my corner, I have her, and I have Faith in my corner. And I have 2 Christian life coaches as well. So, and I've invested in that. So I want to say too, when you're building a support network, sometimes it might mean putting some money down. There is nothing wrong with that. If it's going to help you, invest in it. Self-care sometimes does mean putting money on the table. Okay. I know people who, for them, self-care, it's not personally something for me, but some people I know, they love to get monthly massages, and they put down the money for that once a month. And that's a form of self-care for them. And that is fine. So what is something that you might need to plunk some money down for? And I know we're on fixed incomes as caregivers, but still, it's okay. It's not shameful to put in some money down, whether it's $20 or maybe $200 for the year for like a membership or something. Whatever it might be for you. Just think about that and realize there is no shame in asking for self. And if you doing self-care for yourself, and if you are in a season where you are thinking about being a mompreneur like we are, there's no shame for asking for help either, because let's face it, you can't do it. I mean, Rebekah and I both come from different industries where we don't have a business background. We've had to learn to write copy. We've had to learn to market our businesses. We've had to learn how to write products and curtail things and programs to where it meets the needs of our clients, our ideal clients, where they're at. Okay. It didn't happen overnight. I've been at this for 3 years. Rebecca's been at this for like 3 years as well, 3 to 4 years, and we're still learning. It's not a one and done process. As we get more goals and we go out the pipeline of what we want to do, it doesn't happen overnight. And the same is true with our self-care journeys, with our marriages, with our caregiving journey. It doesn't happen overnight.
No.
And once you hit one goal, there's going to be something else, I guarantee you, that you're going to want to go after. And that is fine. That is absolutely fine, guys. So, Rebekah, if people are interested in learning more about your work, where can people find you?
My main place that I hang out is my Facebook group, The Thriving Mamas, where you can learn to calm the chaos and simplify life and business. You can also find me on Instagram at the Rebekah Lara.
Awesome. And then do you have any like freebies or free resources you'd like to share with our audience?
Yes. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about how to thrive and make time for yourself and your goals, I have a free series, 3 workshops called the Time to Thrive series. And that will help you just create the time in your schedule to go after these things, whether it's a business or self-care, whatever goal is on your heart.
Mm-hmm. And the Time to Thrive series was the bomb. Okay, just personally speaking, I went through that, and that was so good. So it's really good, guys. And the biggest thing I think too, when you're thinking about all the stuff, is you can't remember everything. Okay, things happen. So the first thing I would do while you're making a plan, paper calendar, a planner, or Asana or Notion. Those are some, just to name a few. Google Calendar. Rebecca and I live by, Airtable, and we've used Asana, Google Calendar. We live by it because there's just no way that we can remember everything that we need to do with our life, personal, professional. So while you're creating those goals, start having a place to document them. So that way you have a schedule, you have a routine, and be flexible, like Rebecca said. Maybe you might have to brainstorm with your spouse. For us personally, the biggest thing was, how can I set up office hours to work on stuff and do things like this where I'm not impacting my dad or my husband, because I do have a 4-year-old. And so trying to make it fair to where I can have it quiet, I can work, I can shut my office door and work and not be worried about impacting them a lot, is just kind of really just ebbing and flowing it. So if my husband's off, maybe I might have a little bit more time, but most of the time, I only work Monday through Friday, and it's like got up a little earlier today, but most of the times it's like from 7 to like 11. Monday's the exception because I do some extra calls over in the mastermind, which I love, but that's okay. So think about, be thinking about that. Is there a way that maybe some days you can work a little less, some days you can work a little bit more, and also if you're inspired, you can kind of play around with it that way. There's no wrong or right way, and it really needs to make sense with the season that you're in. So if you're in a season where things are you're really just trying to get a handle on the caregiving side right now, you may not have a lot of time. So it's going to be smaller. It's going to be smaller. So maybe it's going to be just an hour in the morning, like what Rebecca and I do, to even just focus on ourselves so we can have our cup filled to hit the floor running for all the caregiving things. And that's fine. But maybe you are in a season where like, okay, we got a routine with the caregiving side, everything's falling into place. Now I want to start carving out time and looking at my day about what times a day work better for me to work on my goals, be it, personal or self-care related or business. Okay. I block out 4 hours a day for myself. For me. Is it a ton? No, it's not a traditional work day, but it's what I got, and that's okay. And that is enough. So Rebecca, you can spin this question any way you want, but I've had a lot of fun with this question with other guests I've had on the podcast. But what is something that we have talked about in our conversation, or maybe just share, or you can spin it and share something that has just really stuck with you through your entrepreneur, motherhood, self-care journey that has just really helped you along the way. So spin it whichever way you want, girl.
Okay, that's a great question. And what comes to mind for me is a quote that one of my coaches shared with me. And at this point in my journey, it just really resonates and like kind of, it's part of my belief plan, like you were talking about, is the quote, "Tend to your garden first, so that you have more harvest to share with others. And for me, that just feels very abundant, that I know when I tend to my own garden or my own self-care first, then I'm able to share abundantly with everyone, from my family to my clients. And it's coming from a place where we all like grow together. And so that's what's inspired me to keep going and to keep caring for myself and to keep supporting my clients and my community. And it feels very abundant and full of joy. And that's my goal.
I love that. That kind of ties in good with my devotional this morning. It was in Second Chronicles, and it was talking about this king named Hezekiah and how he was just really devoted to following God at all costs. And he was obedient in prayer and just submitting to him first. And when he did that, everything else just fell into place. So was it always easy? Of course not.
Right.
Life never is, no matter what you believe. But he still prospered. So, and it tied in with another verse from Matthew where it talked about too, about how if you don't you think and and believe that if you ask God for these things and he knows the desires of your heart, that will not come true. So I think that, just and prosper, I want guys, I want you to, wherever you're at in your journey, be it getting back on the bandwagon with self-care, with getting a handle on being a caregiver for the first time without having a prior experience in the industry as a healthcare worker like I have. I really want you thinking about how you can prosper where you're at. Prosper where you're at. Okay. I know it feels like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And I know it feels scary and overwhelming. I know for Rebekah, knowing that she did not have a prior background in healthcare, that had to be so scary for her with hearing these diagnoses, not having an understanding or a foothold in the industry of knowing kind of what some of the stuff meant and having that happen 3 times with 3 different daughters. That's scary. And even as a healthcare worker, it was scary for me hearing that my husband's sick. No one wants to hear that your husband's sick, or to even see like that we all naturally go through seeing our parents or grandparents age and get sick and pass away. Because that's scary, because that, that support system that we have that we lean on is diminishing, and that's scary. But I will say that life can still be great. Okay. Even though things are hard, life can still be great. Are all days easy? Of course not. But I do want you to know that you matter. Your story matters. Rebekah and I have decided, and we choose daily, that you know what? We've been through some hard things, but we choose to show up because our story matters. And we know it can change the life of somebody else. So if you're struggling with the caregiving side, check me out. I can help you. If you're struggling with productivity and just trying to get the chaos, calm the chaos. I love when Rebekah says that. If you need to calm the chaos in that regard, Rebekah's your girl to go to, and she can help you. And either way, and if it's not us that you need, please ask for help somewhere else. Okay. Asking for help is the biggest thing that you can do for yourself in your journey, because you can't do it alone. You're not Superwoman.
Right.
And it's okay. And there's no shame in asking for help. So Rebekah, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. This episode was amazing. I am so glad that I got to have you on finally. And I just really appreciate everything that you have done, because you've spoken so much into my life and will continue to with everything that I've learned from you and continue to learn from you. And definitely check out Rebekah's Facebook group. It'll be like, I'll have all her links and everything below, but definitely go follow her in her Facebook group. Sorry, none of caffeine yet, guys. She has a lot of amazing free workshops and content. So definitely check that out and follow her on Instagram for more amazing tips. And if you are struggling with the caregiving side, definitely again check out the link below to download my free Ultimate Caregiver Organizer, so you'll be thrown onto my email list and be notified via email when I have my new surprise coming out on May 31st. So guys, thank you for watching. You're doing the best you can. Thank you, Rebekah, again for joining us. And I will see you guys in the next episode of the Caregiver Coffee Chat podcast. See you next week, guys.